Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. It is great to see Town Hall completely full tonight. And I know that we pulled this town hall together pretty quickly, and we immediately saw the registrations coming in. And this is just such a critical moment. And you've seen a lot of what we've been fighting against, fighting for, fighting on behalf of our country for. And I just want to thank you. Thank you so much for everything that you are doing. This is my 127th town hall. How many people are here at a town hall for the first time? Oh, I love that. Give them a round of applause. That is so fantastic. That's so beautiful. That always makes me really happy because this is the moment where we need people to engage differently, and I really see you. I see that you are doing that in so many ways. Look, I'm going to start with Minnesota because that's all we can start with right now. And I will just say that we have to choose to be on the right side of history. We have to. We absolutely have to. Somebody had a sign, believe your eyes. We know what we saw. We know what we saw with Renee Good's murder. We know what we saw with Alex Preddy's murder. We know what we saw. And this moment calls for us to do everything we can to really protect our democracy because they are trying to steal it from under our eyes. Renee Good was a US citizen, a mom, a wife, a neighbor, a daughter, a friend. She was standing up for her community, and her last words were, "I'm not mad at you, dude," as she was turning the car away, and she was shot not just once, not just twice, but 3 times by an ICE agent. And if we weren't shocked enough by that, then we were shocked by DHS lying to us, trying to assassinate not just her, which they did, but trying to assassinate her character and the character of her wife, Becca. And then we saw the murder of Alex Preddy. Alex was also a US citizen, an ICU nurse at the VA, who was out filming, which is completely lawful and protected within our First Amendment rights, filming the violence and the out-of-controlness of these ICE and CBP agents. And he went to help somebody who was being shoved into the snow by a CBP agent and was tackled to the ground. Yes, he had a gun. Minnesota is a legal carry, conceal, and open carry state. He didn't put his hand on the gun. He didn't try to. From all the videos we can see, he was disarmed of that gun before he was shot 10 times in 5 seconds. And so when we look at this, we see that American democracy is dying before our very eyes. And it's not just Minnesota. It was Illinois. It's been California. It's been Oregon, in small pieces in our state right here at home, which I'll talk about a little bit, across the country. And we know what this means for us, because if you can do this to any of these people, you can do it anywhere. And so I really do feel like we're in the fight of our lives. And we are seeing the country respond in really important ways. And look, no one else is going to be able to fix this except us, we the people. And that's all of us, because what authoritarians do is they take over the levers of government. And I want to be clear that that's what we're seeing, is an authoritarian takeover of our government, a takeover of the Department of Justice, the weaponizing of the Department of Justice against any perceived enemies, against anyone that stands up, a weaponizing of all of the levers of government. And ICE, Border Patrol, the National Guard, which Trump has tried to deploy to many cities. All of this is being used to quash the rights of all of us. And so I want to be clear about a couple of things. Number one, Kristi Noem should be fired, resigned, or impeached. We cannot have her in leadership. So I'm an original co-sponsor of the impeachment resolution, but we are also, we just sent out a statement today on the for the Judiciary Dems, calling on Jim Jordan, the chairman, to have an impeachment hearing in the Judiciary Committee. And otherwise, we will start our own impeachment inquiry into Kristi Noem. But she's got to go. Second, ICE and CBP need to get out of Minnesota and out of our cities. Third, we need true independent investigations into these murders of Renee Good, of Alex Preddy, and they need to be in conjunction with with Minnesota State law enforcement, because they've been shut out of these investigations, and it is a real problem. In fact, the Minnesota Department of Criminal Investigations went to the scene of Alex Preddy's murder and took the unusual step of having a warrant to say you have to preserve the evidence at the scene. And they were denied entry, even with a warrant, by the federal agents. So this is extremely important. Fourth, and very importantly right now, Congress cannot continue to fund ICE and CBP and DHS. We have very few, wow, I'm losing my voice already, and I barely started with you all. I don't know what's going on here. I was getting all worked up. That's what's happening. We have very few levers of power in the minority. That's just the truth. And especially in the House, it's a simple majority, which Republicans have. So we took the unprecedented step of 95% of Democrats voted against the DHS funding bill. That was something that I helped lead our Democratic caucus to do. And we outlined the kinds of specific guardrails that have to be in place. Things like, you cannot just arrest people without a judicial warrant, right? Get those masks off. Why do we have masked men kidnapping people? We have to stop the mass incarceration. Now the number is up to 73,000 people every night being held in for-profit private immigrant incarceration facilities that we used to politely call detention centers. That has to stop. The Cato Institute has said that only 5% of those people have actually committed any violent crime. The other 95% have not. 70% have never committed any crime at all, and the remaining 25% are just minor infractions like traffic tickets and other small misdemeanors. This is insanity. These are many people who are in legal immigration proceedings or have lived here for many, many years. And when they pick up a 5-year-old boy who is a US citizen and use him as bait to get his undocumented father, who has never committed a crime, to come out, and they put him into deportation proceedings. By the way, Liam and his father, a judge just ruled today that the federal government cannot, the Trump administration cannot deport them. So that is good. But we really need to, as soon as we get the gavels back, we have to dismantle DHS and ICE and CBP. And we have to reconstruct them to what they really should be doing. Remember, don't let people tell you that these are agencies that have always existed and they need to exist. They didn't exist before 9/11. DHS was formed in the aftermath of the Patriot Act. That's how I got my start in organizing post 9/11. So I know this history really well. That's when they formed this unwieldy, sprawling agency with enormous amounts of money. And they created these law enforcement agencies like ICE, essentially in the model of a criminal system, except guess what? The immigration system is a civil system. It used to be INS. Remember the old INS building down here south of downtown? So it used to be Immigration and Naturalization Services, and it was primarily a service agency, and it had a small enforcement component, but it was in the Department of Justice to make sure that we protected the constitutional rights of everyone. So anyone that says that we don't want any enforcement if we get rid of ICE is lying. You can have enforcement, but it can be in line with the constitutional rights of every person. And we can make sure that we right-size it instead of all this funding that now makes immigration enforcement bigger than even what we have for the Bureau of Prisons in this country. That's the work that we are going to have to do. But in the meantime, we can say in Congress, and we did in the House, and now the Senate is going to have to do it this week, no more funding without these serious, sweeping accountability and guardrails that say you can't arrest people without warrants, that you can't have the mask. We've put a list of things together, and it's going to be up to the Senate to make sure that they pass it. And let me tell you, this is not a partisan issue. Republicans are starting to speak out on it, and I also want to call out, I invited her to come tonight, but she had a personal commitment. She wanted me to tell you she's sorry she couldn't come. But King County Council member Teresa Mosqueda today passed a unanimous resolution calling for us in Congress not to fund ICE and CBP without these guardrails and to get ICE and CBP out of our cities. And it was unanimous. The Republicans both voted for it, and Pete actually, I haven't listened to the quote, but he said this is not a partisan issue. We need Republicans in Congress to do the same thing and to vote against this funding bill, and we need Democrats in the Senate to hold the line and get these reforms in before we send another cent over. Now look, if once we get the gavels back, we are also going to hold every single perpetrator accountable. We're going to haul their asses before the Judiciary Committee, and we're going to hold them accountable. If you've ever wondered about this, this has never been about immigration. It has never been about public safety. It has been about taking authoritarian control of our government. And it is directly tied, in my mind, to affordability. These are not two competing things. They really are intertwined, because the project is a white nationalist project, but it is also a project of billionaires and of control over the economy and over your lives. And so when you make the choice to slash healthcare for 20 million Americans and slash Medicaid for 15 million people, and you make the choice to put $75 billion into ICE, those are directly related. We are choosing what we spend our money on, and it is not the people of the United States of America being able to have opportunity, and is certainly not about a democracy where we all have certain inalienable rights that accrue to all of us. And I want to also be very clear for anyone that it might be confused about this. The First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the right to be free from illegal search and seizure applies to every single person in this country. It is not determined. It is not determined by immigration status or any other status. So this project of this Trump administration and everyone who's still supporting it, and we have so many people who voted for Trump and are saying this is not what I wanted, this is not what I thought, and we welcome you if you're here tonight. We welcome you because we need everybody to understand we're fighting for our democracy, and it's not about Democrats or Republicans or independents, it's about what democracy requires. But this is a project of cruelty. That's what it is. And I feel heartbroken, and I love coming home because you give me hope and you remind me who I'm fighting for, and I know I've got you with me. But it is really cruel. It's really cruel. And that's the point, because the point is to suppress dissent. The point is to make you feel hopeless and powerless, because hopelessness and powerlessness are tools of the oppressor. But you're here tonight because you're refusing to allow that happen, right? And so, in this moment, we are seeing incredible courage. I mean, a week after Renee Good was murdered, I led a delegation of 28 members of Congress from 18 states to Minneapolis, St. Paul. And we did a hearing, an accountability hearing right there. And this has been part of the series of hearings, because I know I'm not yet the chair of the Immigration Subcommittee, but I will be in January. I will be. But even if they won't hold a hearing, it doesn't mean I can't. So I'm holding hearings. There's a whole series called Kidnapped and Disappeared. Minneapolis was the 6th in the series. We did one in Illinois. The other ones have been in DC, and I hope you go and listen to them, because we bring people who are directly impacted to give their testimony, and it's so powerful. We have law enforcement. We've had people from the National Guard. We've had elected officials, and so we did that in Minneapolis. And I just want to take a moment to have you join me in sending our love to the Minnesotans who are standing up despite so much risk to them. We love you, Minnesota. We are all Minnesota tonight. We will never back down from this fight, and we will stand in solidarity with Minnesota, with Illinois, with California, with Washington State, with Oregon. We are not backing down, because this is our damn country, and we are going to make sure that we keep the democracy we deserve. Oh, I had a lot of comments written down here, but I think I'm going to skip through a lot of them. There are some things that are happening right now in Minnesota. Gregory Bovino has been removed from Minnesota. This is the guy, by the way, that is the head of CBP, that in Illinois had to be hauled before a judge because he was disobeying her court order and throwing tear gas canisters into the crowd to incite the crowd, to try to get them to be violent so that Donald Trump would be able to invoke the Insurrection Act. And so anyway, he's out of Minnesota. A judge in Minnesota today demanded that Todd Lyon, the ICE acting director, show up in court to explain why he's violating court orders. And a federal judge is right now deciding on a lawsuit from the state of Minnesota to end Operation Metro Surge, the occupation of the state by federal agents. So let's see where that one goes. Locally, I know everyone's on alert. And I know that there have been a lot of rumors. I know that some of our schools went on soft lockdown. I wanted to tell you that we are coordinating very closely my offices with Mayor Wilson, with County Executive Zahilai, with Governor Ferguson. In fact, on Friday, I have a meeting with our labor, immigrant, faith leaders, plus the mayor and the county exec. I'm in close communication with the governor. And so what we know is that ICE and CBP are operating in Washington state, but not at the numbers that we've seen in other states. But we're very aware of the activity, and some of you read Danny Westneat's column, which kind of went through some of the numbers the other day. And so what I would say is it's really important that we get ready if there is a surge. And the best way to do that is to go to the Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network, WISN. They have trainings for people, or to One America. There is a Washington for All coalition that One America, my organization that I started and led, and we're so grateful for the leadership of Roxana Naruzi, who runs it now, and for all the work that they are doing to pull together a very robust plan of what we do. But we do need our legal observers, not legal observers, but observers trained. We need people ready to be willing to film ICE activity, the whistles. There are things that have worked around the country that are really, really important. So I hope that you go and get involved with those organizations. Also, our labor unions are leading peacekeeping trainings that are really important. Big shout out to labor if we've got you in the room. And so that's another really important component. And so those are all the things that are happening right now, but we will keep you posted as we hear more, and you can always reach out to our office if you do hear something. I know the mayor is standing up sort of a specific effort to try and track down the rumors when they happen and try to make sure that we know what is a rumor, what is an alert, and how do we respond. And I hope those of you who have employers, whether it's big corporations that are still bending the knee to Donald Trump and funding his ballrooms and his White House, we need to get our leaders at every level to be speaking out about this. You know, this is really, really important. Okay, I'm going to quickly, how do you quickly run through foreign affairs? But I'm just going to say, you saw me be also very concerned about the unauthorized military action in Venezuela, the threats on Cuba, Colombia, of course, Greenland. This is an administration that is out of control, that's destroying our NATO relationships and our relationships with all of our partners, Canada, Mexico. And Congress alone has the power to start war. We debate it. That's what we're supposed to do. Iran, absolutely. This is another place where what's happening is horrific with the protesters that have been murdered in Iran. We also have to make sure that we pursue diplomacy and not military action in these situations. So it's very complicated, but important that we debate it. Not that Donald Trump gets to make that. That is a power that was given to us by the founding framers. And they specifically said Congress has to debate it and declare war and any kind of authorization for use of military force because the consequences are so significant that it should be something that is debated by the representatives who are elected by the people and not by one person. And so you might know that the last War Powers resolution on Venezuela failed in the House 215 to 215. It was a tied vote. It was the second vote we had on a War Powers resolution. We're going to continue to try to make sure that Republicans stand up and fight. Look, this is about the authority. I don't understand why Republicans want to serve in Congress if they're just going to give away all their power to the cult leader, right? Then you don't need to serve. Don't say you represent people if all you're going to do is follow the guy, no matter what he tells you, despite the Constitution that you swore an oath to. And so we're still working on all of that. Now, all of this, I think, is also part of the project to distract us from the economy and what's happening. And so this is all about the billionaires. I have a little Instagram series called All About the Billionaires, where I go through all the things that he's doing, that Trump is doing to satisfy the billionaires. They say they're going after fraud, but you do know, right, that he's pardoned so many fraudsters. He has made, at minimum, $1.4 billion that's been documented by the New York Times off personal scams and grifts since coming back to office. The pardons that were issued by Donald Trump have cost the American public and victims more than $1.3 billion in fines and restitution that would have gone to Americans. And he has forced the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, to drop more than 20 cases, which means that consumers are missing out on about $3 billion of settlements that would have been paid by big corporations like big banks to Americans who were ripped off by those corporations. He gave the economy an A, let me see how many pluses are here, A plus rating. But here's what's actually happening. 1 in 5 Americans can't afford heating bills right now. More than a third of Americans can't cover a $400 emergency payment. 5 million people have dropped insurance completely. 58% of Americans can't afford education. These numbers just came out today from the New York Times Siena poll. 58% can't afford education. 54% can't afford housing. 47% can't afford health care. And 44% can't afford having a family. I came to this country because America was the place that offered opportunity for people, where people could build a good life, where you could thrive, not just survive, where you could have a home, where you could have a good union job that paid you what you needed, that you could have your rights protected. And that's not what we have today. Here in Washington, almost 14,000 people just in the 7th district that I represent will lose Apple Health coverage thanks to Medicaid cuts. 14 rural hospitals are now at risk of closing in our state. 23,000 people just in this district have had their premiums rise. How many people have seen their premiums rise, their health insurance premiums rise? Right. And is there anybody who is deciding not to get health insurance because of the cost? Yeah, a few people, and some may not want to say. 288,000 people statewide have had their premiums rise in Washington, and job growth has slowed. Now, you may know that you elected somebody who is the lead sponsor of the Medicare for All bill in the House. We have brand new polling that's now up on our Medicare for All PAC website that you can check out that shows that 90% of Democrats, I think it's 56% of independents, and 1 in 5 Republicans across the district oversampled for the toughest districts, battleground districts, so it's a more conservative sample than you would normally have in a national survey, support Medicare for All because this healthcare system has been destroyed. It was already broken with private for-profit insurance companies, and now it's been destroyed by Republicans stripping ACA subsidies. Now, we are in a moment where I actually think we could take the gavels back and actually put together a real comprehensive universal healthcare plan. And just in the last month, 5 new members of Congress came on to the Medicare for All bill, and only 1 of the 5 was in the Progressive Caucus. So these are people in districts like Shamari Figures in Alabama, Jared Moskowitz in Florida. These are not necessarily progressives, but they understand that the healthcare system is broken, and that's going to be our next project. I also wanted to tell you that I formed something called the Monopoly Busters Caucus, and I feel like we need to get capes made like superheroes. We're fighting the monopolies. But tomorrow I'm having our first field hearing on consolidation in the food industry, from farm to table. So that is public. You can come. We have 4 members of Congress coming from across the country. The former Attorney General for Antitrust, Jonathan Cantor, will be here as a witness. We have an independent grocer, a farmer, a grocery store worker, and a small business owner who are all testifying, and there'll be an opportunity for the public to just offer short testimony as well. Governor Bob Ferguson will be there also, so that's at City Hall tomorrow night at 6 p.m. if you're interested. Okay, very last thing, Epstein files. I know. Epstein files. I am not going to stop fighting for these women survivors. And Trump's DOJ is turning themselves inside and out to protect these pedophiles who were involved in the Epstein ring. And if you look at, we passed a law that says they have to release all the files. And they released them, and they're so redacted. And we specifically said you can't redact anything unless it's to protect the identity of the victims. And it's so redacted. So we're in court around that. But we know that Trump is named multiple times, and some of you saw me question Director Kash Patel about this. The patience I have. I think of Job. I know that it is incredibly frustrating. I'll end with this before we go to your questions. I know it's incredibly frustrating to see this happen. And I know that there's a lot of anger and fear and frustration, and people are like, stop it. Why can't you stop it? Right? And that's super legitimate. But what we have to understand is that the founders thought they had put checks and balances into the Constitution. I thought we had checks and balances. Who here thought we had checks and balances? Right. What we're finding out is that those checks and balances don't really exist. Because check number 1, Congress, right? Separation of powers. Congress is supposed to be a check and a balance on the power of the executive, but it assumes that the people in the majority party care about the Constitution over loyalty to the president. And so what happens, I was in the grocery store the other day, and a woman came up to me and said, I don't understand, I'm from a European country. Can't you just kick him out? I said, well, the way it's framed is you got to impeach and convict. The House can impeach, we've done it twice with a simple majority, but then you've got to convict in the Senate, right? With a 2/3 majority. And so how do you do that if the majority party, unless you have that much power, which we haven't had that kind of supermajority in the Senate, how can you do that if the majority party refuses to go along? I mean, if they had convicted in the Senate after January 6th, we wouldn't be in this position. So I say that because, look, I'm trying to do everything I can in Congress, and I know people are frustrated that we can't do more, and we got to make sure that, particularly in the Senate, where they need a 60-vote threshold, that they stand strong. But the power of Congress is really limited by the fact that Republicans are refusing to stand up. And so it stops us from being able to really exercise that check and balance. Second check and balance is the courts. And listen, the lower courts, the federal courts, are doing an amazing job for the most part. They really are. But you have a right-wing rigged Supreme Court. And they are issuing shadow dockets where they just have a one-sentence ruling. And they're overturning lower courts and they're centralizing power at the Supreme Court. So check number 2, lower courts are trying to hold people accountable, but Supreme Court overturning a lot of that, making it very difficult for the courts to do their work. And so the third one really is you. It's you. It's we. It's we the people. And this is making a difference. You're showing up at rallies, at protests, in Minnesota, in nonviolent resistance that is really taking on serious risk and showing up in a different way than even just a protest or a rally. This is what ultimately defeats authoritarians around the world. And so we're all being called to do things that are out of our comfort zone. And I've been running on the campaign side, I run something called Resistance Lab, and maybe some of you. We've now trained 24,000 people in all 50 states on how to take on authoritarians and dictators. We do a virtual training every month. If you haven't done it yet, go to resistancelab.us to sign up. We just had one special one called Stand for Good on Sunday. We had 3,000 people from 40 states on. And really talking about how you take local action, how you move things forward. So don't give up the power that you have. You have power, we have power. And we can take it back. And we will take it back. And I'm so grateful to you for being here tonight. And we'll get to your questions right now. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We have 2 microphones, 1 on each side. We have so many people that I'm going to take 2 questions at the same time. So you'll ask your question. We've gotten very good at these town halls. This is 127th. So do not try to take the microphone from my staff. By the way, can we give a huge round of applause for my team that works so hard to support you? I can't remember how, do we give a minute for the question? 1 minute for your question or comment, and they will take the mic away from you. So don't ask them to hold it. And then we'll take 2 from each side, guys, and then I'll answer the 2, and then we'll go to the other side. And I'm gonna take notes so I remember your questions. Corey, you wanna go?
Okay, my first question, and excuse my voice, I don't have a vocal cord. I'm most concerned about intimidation of voters at the poll. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to find ways where I can be actively engaged in an issue where I'm disabled, so I can't go out and scream and yell and do whatever. But I'm very concerned about intimidation at the polls. Yeah. And so I just read some figures today that it's going to cost $40 billion to get every citizen of the United States with legal ID. Mm-hmm. And we're very lucky here in Seattle that we can vote. But that, to me, is the issue, because it'll take a nanosecond to just shut the polls down.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for the question. Really important.
Hello. Sorry. Hello. Everything you said tonight was wonderful, but you didn't mention money in politics, and that, I mean, sure, we can impeach people, but we can also vote people out. And We can't vote people out if the powers that be with all the money are rigging the elections in that sense.
Yeah.
So I just want to ask you to look into something called the Montana Project.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because I don't know if anything has been started in this state, but I think that's a brilliant plan, and we should really look into that.
Totally.
And we got to fight the money.
Thank you so much. Okay, and I think they're actually both related, these questions. So on voter intimidation, first of all, this is a huge issue. We're filing cases in court around states that are trying to suppress voters, refuse to provide water to people at the polls, all the ways in which voters are intimidated, including, as you mentioned, new ID requirements that Republicans are trying to get into many places. And so we're both in the courts, but we also want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to not scare people off from voting and to encourage them to make sure they go. And in many of these states where we're lucky, as you said, in Washington State, because we've got vote by mail, but in states where they have to go in person, there are huge new trainings for poll watchers, for volunteers at the polls, because they've intimidated a lot of the people that work those polls, those in-person polls. So there's an effort now to train and ready those people as well. And it's kind of a dual-edged thing. Once we get back into power, we have to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And this relates to the second question, we also have to pass the For the People Act, which is both about expanding voting rights and about getting, money out of politics. And on clap so I can take a drink. On the money out of politics, when you elected me in 2016, I was one of only 4 members of Congress at the time that refused to take any corporate PAC money. I never have, I never will. I'm funded by individual contributions. There are now about 60 of us, but that's a pretty small number. And so we really need to number one, we need a publicly funded campaign system so that we don't have to raise money at all. And you don't get those annoying emails from me saying, give me $3, but it really matters, so if you get them, please give them to me. But it means I don't have to rely on corporations, I never will. But also, we need to take on dark money. And so the Montana Project is something I've asked my staff to look at, and I'm part of another group separately that's looking at a people's pledge and trying to move that in places like Arizona. This is more campaign related, so I'll just say the state party can actually take a stand around this as well. It's a little bit more complicated for those of us in top 2 states, but Arizona would be a great example. Montana is similar. It's trying to get dark money out. And I have the We the People amendment, of course, that says that corporations are not individuals and they don't get to have free speech. So. They won't let you hold it, I promise you.
Hi, Representative Jayapal. I'm Madison. I'm the editor of the Seattle Gay News.
Great.
Thank you, guys. I had 2 questions. We'll see if I can fit them in. One is about Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez, who broke ranks of Democrats and voted for ICE and DHS. I wanted to know, as a more progressive member of the Democratic Party, what can y'all do in Congress to kind of make sure folks aren't breaking ranks, that we're not allowing folks in the party to vote for ICE and that funding? And then the other question I had real quick was about, as a transgender woman, I wanted to ask about Sarah McBride and other trans members of Congress and what Democrats were doing to try to make sure that trans folks are being treated properly. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Traditionally, the vote against DHS funding, I told you I've voted against it every year I've been in Congress, but I'm usually one of, it depends, like 40, 50, 60 at most. This year, everyone except for 7 Democrats voted against it. And I think those 7 Democrats are hearing from everyone. I think there was an effort to try and make sure that this was a unified vote, and there were some people who, for whatever reasons, didn't do that. I think their constituents need to hold them accountable in whatever way feels appropriate. But I do want you to know that 95% of Democrats in the House voted against that DHS funding bill, which is pretty remarkable. I know you guys are like, it's only 95%, why not? Why not 100%? That's what my father used to say to me when I got a B instead of an A. But this is a bit more important than what grade I got. But I'll just say it is important. Look, we're setting the table for when we have the gavels back. And we made an argument that we were finally able to get the majority of our party to make. Now, the Senate's got a hold. Let me say something quickly about the Senate vote that I forgot to say. We don't want a performative no vote, right? There will be a vote on Thursday where they will all vote no on the package because it includes the funding. And then the Republicans might try to pull the DHS package bill aside separately and offer a separate vote, but still get enough Democratic votes to pass it so that the majority of people can vote no, but it'll still pass. That's not what I'm looking for. What we need is for them to hold the line and get these reforms that independents, Republicans, and Democrats want, and to remember that if Republicans choose to shut down the government because they want ICE and CBP to continue to violate people's constitutional rights, they will be held accountable for that. So, I'm the co-chair of the Trans Equality Task Force, and so we have been doing everything we can, both to fight back against the attacks on trans people, but also to elect more trans people, to make sure that we are holding up our end of the bargain, to let people be who they are, and to not target trans people across the country. And so we'll continue to do that.
Hi, thanks. I think I, like many people, are concerned about the free and fair election coming up in November. And one of the things that had occurred to some, given the egregious acts of this executive, is that there may be some Republicans that might draw the line. And I'm thinking of perhaps Andy Fishback or Brad Finstead in Minnesota. Is it possible that there are a few Republicans that might caucus with the Democrats? And if so, is there anything that we could do who are not their constituents to help that along?
I think it's a really, sorry, I'm going to take two questions. Yeah, I forgot.
This is not a speech, it's just articulate. So many bonfire issues, including corporate Democrats. I'll leave that to the community to inquire about. But my concern is about the messaging capabilities of the national democratic machine.
The what? Say that again?
Messaging capabilities of the national democratic machine. I'm heading toward Ken Martin, okay? You are not, or you are the most notable exception to effective messaging in the entire American legislative community, okay? However, the noble cause of activism around elements of identity politics seemed to turn off many voters in November of '24. And it was used against us, tragically, in my opinion. Okay? In this context, Ken Martin did not release the election autopsy report. Polls show immigration, the border, and inflation were the top two issues. And if you'd like to comment on what you think is the third most, that would be good. But my question is this: what is happening, other than your sterling example, to improve the messaging capabilities of the Democratic national machine?
Thank you. So on the first question and the GOP, are there some GOP members who will caucus? You saw that the Republican candidate for governor in Minnesota dropped out and said he can't be a Republican. And look, this is why I say it doesn't matter if you voted for Trump last time around. If you feel like this is not what you voted for, come and join us. we welcome you, and there's no specific conversations. We always think maybe there will be, you know, Marjorie Taylor Greene at one point was starting to sound a little like some of us on a few issues. I know. You see how much hope we have? Believe me, I don't forget about the things she said about trans people. I think that we're always looking for that opportunity, but I just don't know. I don't know if there's enough courage over there to do those kinds of things. But we'll keep looking for the opportunity. On the DNC messaging, I always say I am not responsible for the DNC. I can't do that. But what I will say is, don't undermine how effective we have been in shifting the conversation to affordability, to healthcare, right? We made healthcare the #1 issue in the country. And it was because we were incredibly, I'm not talking about the DNC, I'm talking about members of Congress. We, Democrats, we were very effective in being disciplined about pushing the message of healthcare. Now I've had to push my own party over and over again, you see it, around taking on billionaires, taking on corporations. But guess what? Now some of our ideas are really popular. I always say what it means to be a progressive is that you're first to the best and most just idea, and then everyone else runs to catch up with you later. So they call us crazy in the beginning and idealistic and whatever, but listen, the things that we're talking about now as the Democratic Party are things that we as progressives were pushing 10 years ago. That's good. I welcome everyone into the conversation. That's how we get this stuff done. So I think that autopsy report should have been released. I don't know why it wasn't. I don't think it helps us to have this idea that we're trying to cover things up. I don't know what it said. I'm not sure that I agree with it. A lot of people said we lost the election because of immigration and trans people. I think we lost the election because people couldn't afford their damn lives. And I think that they used immigration, maybe they used trans people to try and divide us, but it's not like we were. This is about distracting us, and it's an age-old thing to try to use these things to divide us. So we shouldn't let it. And I think if we had passed Build Back Better, which I was the chair of the Progressive Caucus pushing for that, and we had addressed childcare, universal childcare, and housing, I think we might have won the election. If we had addressed Gaza in a real way, I think we might have won the election. So what if? We have to look at now, and we have to look at how we get the gavels back in November and get us back into power.
10 months ago, I asked you about filing articles of impeachment for Donald Trump, and you told me that doing so would be a waste of your time. So my question is, how many more people need to die for it to be worth your while? And before you tell me that you don't have the votes, 1, I don't care. I want you putting your colleagues on the record every day that they stand for what this administration is doing. 2, if it does happen to pass the House, even if you don't have the votes to convict in the Senate, information can come out during discovery in the trial. And 3, stop telling me you are doing everything in your power when you are not. You can invoke Article 9 and bring a vote to the floor, and it has to go within 2 days. And since I have a little extra time, if anyone wants a free ICE alert whistle, come find me in the purple fuck Nazi sweater after.
Yes, sir.
Wow. After a statement like that, I don't know where to go.
You and me both.
So my problem is with the Supreme Court and the fact that John Roberts, when on the day he was confirmed, he had already committed himself to the unitary executive theory of government, which wipes out the chance for the independent agencies that the Congress has passed. And they're all organized around Scalia's 1988 decision giving the Federalist Society the idea of how to generate the unitary executive theory. You know, we got to challenge all six of those conservative justices were put into their confirmation hearings are all run by Leonard Leo, who that guy created the Supreme Court as it is now.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I don't like my words being mischaracterized. I never said it's a waste of time to impeach Donald Trump. I impeached him twice in the House. I voted for every Al Green's put out articles of impeachment. I've always voted to bring them. What I'm saying is that we don't have the votes right now. And I would sign on, I've signed on to articles of impeachment, but we got to look at the now. And so listen, I respect everybody. You disagree with me, I don't mind. You're allowed to do that. This is America. But I am trying to do everything I can, and I was in that gallery, okay? I almost lost my life. There is nobody that wants to impeach Donald Trump more than me. On the Supreme Court and unitary executive theory, this is really, really important because they have bought and paid for the Supreme Court. And not all of the Supreme Court justices, but the MAGA right version. I mean, they're all paid for. So many of them have accepted bribes. They're corrupt. But also, they've been moving this unitary executive theory in Project. It was in Project 2025. It's been put out there by a whole host of scholars in articles, and so it is a real problem, and we have to have our version of what we're going to accomplish, and I'm working on that. I don't want to call it Project 2027 or Project 2029 because I don't want to use their words, but we do have to have that set of things that we are going to move forward, and we have to be just as disciplined as they were about it. The Supreme Court, we also need to expand the Supreme Court. And so that has been done before, by the way, this idea that we have to limit it to the number of people. That's not true. It's been expanded multiple times in our history. We can expand it again to reflect the population. I think we should have, Elizabeth Warren and I have a transparency and accountability bill because we got to get corruption out of Supreme Court. It's the only judicial branch that isn't subject to anti-corruption provisions and transparency provisions. So we have a bill to fix that. That's another piece. And then I also think that we should have term limits on Supreme Court justices. So.
What preparations are being made for the likelihood that the felon in the White House will try to suspend the midterm elections?
Mine is a follow-up on that. I am concerned that I find no one in the Democratic Party or organizations that are trying to figure out how to make sure that ICE doesn't come and grab people out of voting lines, come and grab ballot boxes, and try to invalidate the vote in their favor. Do you know anything that's being done on this regard?
In terms of ICE, did you say ICE grabbing people out of voting lines? Yeah.
Interfering with voting.
Sorry?
And interfering with voting.
And interfering with voting, yeah. And in fact, they're trying to do that. You might have seen that Kristi Noem tried to demand the voting rolls be released in Minneapolis. So we're fighting that, obviously, in court, in Minnesota, excuse me. So on suspending the midterms, I mean, this is, you saw the clip with Jack Smith, right? Like, this is what we were trying to get at. Jack Smith did an investigation and found beyond a reasonable doubt that Donald Trump tried to steal the election. And I wanted to get all the points of how he did that It wasn't just the day of the election, January 6th, it was the lead up to it, all the lies that he told, all the pressure that he put to find those votes, all the ways that he pressured his own vice president. And it could have had a very different outcome. And by not holding Trump accountable and not convicting him and not being able to run the investigation all the way through, we end up with a situation where the toll, in Jack Smith's words, is catastrophic, because it means that somebody could do it again. And the only thing I can tell you is that we're doing everything we can to make sure that that does not happen in the midterm election, that Donald Trump doesn't violate the Constitution and try to steal an election and get a third term, all of those things. But it is going to come back to all of us and how we respond and how we hold him accountable. And I think there's no certainty, and I know you want me to say something else, but I don't think there's certainty around this. I think democracy is an ongoing project, and there's a lot of flaws that have come up that we didn't know existed, and we're going to have to fix it, and we're going to have to dig ourselves out of the situation we're in. And I'm just reminded of those words, you have a republic if you can keep it. This is the if you can keep it part. So I don't think there's any guarantees. I'm very worried about ICE trying to get access to our private information. I've been in touch with Governor Ferguson. You saw his executive order looking at how Washington State is sharing information, whether it's your Medicaid, Apple Health information, or whatever it is, your driver's license information. He's got a task force now to get us out, because a lot of the different agencies or different companies that we run information through, we didn't have the same controls on some of those companies as we did with sharing information directly with the federal government, right? Like, we had some bans on sharing information directly, but there's a lot of technologies out there that are taking your information and then they're selling it to the federal government. And so we have to be, I think we just have to continue to think about that. And in terms of ICE specifically, like I said, we need real guardrails around ICE. They can't be arresting people. They can't be pulling people out of line. They can't be pulling people out of cars. They're pulling Americans out of cars by their hair and then shackling them, taking them to detention centers for 9 hours, 10 hours, and then releasing them. This is what we're dealing with right now. So it goes back to how we have to get ICE out of our cities and accountable for what they're doing.
Yes, hi. My concern is about the GEO Center in Tacoma.
Yeah.
When I write to representatives, they won't let me write if I'm not in their district. And GEO Center is federal. So if we want to improve the conditions, the horrible conditions there that people are facing who are incarcerated there, and sometimes for years, we can't let them get in, because we can't get our representatives to take our questions or our pleas to go visit, because they'll say, oh, you're not my constituent, so I'm not going to answer your question. But it's a federal question.
Yeah, totally. Oh, sorry, take the second question. I was about to answer you because I've done so much work on this issue.
Hi, Representative Jayapal.
Hi.
Thank you for hearing us today.
Of course.
This is a question from my Solidarity Supper Club. It's our little group that we formed. We're just curious, one thing, immigration enforcement agencies across the U.S. are increasingly relying on new smartphone apps with facial recognition technology. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
And the apps like Mobile Fortify, simply pointing a phone at somebody's face, and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, both on immigration. So GEO is a private for-profit immigrant incarceration company. that operates the detention center, and the majority of immigration detention centers, the reason they're called detention centers is because the immigration system is a civil system, not a criminal system. So detention is not supposed to be punitive. And when I was at One America, we did the first report on human rights abuses at that Tacoma detention center. Can't remember what year that was. Maybe Jennifer, who worked on this, will remember. But anyway, that facility has continued to expand beds. It's not technically in my district, but I go and visit it all the time because the people of my district are held there. And so don't let anybody tell you you can't contact them if you're not their constituent. You absolutely can. They may not listen to you in the same way because you don't vote for them. But you can still contact them. And you can tell them, if they're in Washington State, that the majority of people in Washington State are held at the Tacoma Detention Center. So they absolutely should go and visit. And you know that ICE is now saying that members of Congress can't do unannounced visits at the detention center. That is total BS, because we authorize the money for those detention centers, and it is both our responsibility and our right to drop in at any time, but they've been preventing us. So we took them to court, and the judge ruled that they had to allow us to go in. But then Kristi Noem, when my colleague Ilhan Omar and some of the Minnesota delegation recently went to the facility there, they said, oh no, that wasn't funded through money that Congress authorized. It was funded through the big bad betrayal bill, which was not authorized by Congress. It was legislation that was passed. This is total BS. I'm really trying to control my language here. And so we're back in court around that. So the conditions are horrific. And I have a bill that I introduced when I first got into Congress that we've continued to update every year called Dignity for Detained Immigrants. It gets rid of private for-profit immigrant incarceration centers. It requires warrants for arrest, just like we're demanding now with the funding bill. And it requires minimum standards, and if you violate those standards, that there's an independent investigator, because most of these prison companies who donate millions of dollars to Donald Trump and his campaign, they don't care what the standards are. So there's no medical care, there's no good food, you know, they have rotting food. There's so many problems with the standards. So anyway, that is a bill that we've continued to add more and more members of Congress to, and we're continuing to push some of the pieces of that, both within the funding bill, and then also when I become chair of the Immigration Subcommittee, I intend to pass that bill. On the apps, I am really worried about apps and AI and how it's being used to identify people. I mean, there's lots of, like, facial recognition technology. I have the bill that bans facial recognition technology. I just put out a bill with Ed Markey on AI and restrictions around how AI is used. Yes, there's some good things that can happen with AI, but we also have to be very, very careful about how it's being utilized. And right now, ICE is using, and DHS is using a lot of these apps to get information, and a lot of the information is false. Like, part of the problem with face recognition technology is it doesn't distinguish for people who have my color skin, black or brown skin. It's very bad at properly identifying people, and there's all kinds of problems. So we're trying to figure out what to do about that, but it is a really big problem, and thank you for raising it tonight.
First of all, thank you so much. I really appreciate how you think out of the box, and I would encourage your colleagues to do the same. It's kind of shocking that you're the only one. Secondarily, in order to maintain hope, I feel like I need to know that we're inching forward here and there, and I feel like we're not getting enough consistent information from the Democrats as a whole. Is there any way that you folks can come together and give us daily updates as to what's going on? I'm thinking not my favorite person, but Cuomo during COVID. Every day we got a message from him and that we knew the ball was moving forward a little bit. Like, I know you folks had an emergency meeting, like maybe Monday. I have no idea what happened during that meeting. I can mine social media and probably figure it out, but it would be great if there was one message coming from the Dems or the progressive Dems every single day till we're out of this crisis. And secondarily, I've got 10 seconds, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So,
I told you they're fierce.
I was wondering about Venezuela and the fact that right now there is kind of a strange status quo where essentially, the VP is in power. And the dictatorship is still running, despite, some hopes that Trump would at least, bring in the legitimate, president, like Maria, like Machado. And so do you think that, what do you think we should do when it comes to the government of Venezuela? Should we try and bring Machado back in power? Should we, should we continue Maduro's trial? Or should we just, keep things like the way they are? Thank you.
Thank you. So on the consistent info, I know that leadership does their regular updates on social media, so you could always go there. If you don't follow me already on social media, I try to do, you'll see I have a lot of content, and I try to do those updates there. I think it's hard. There's not one place really that people can go, but everyone gets their information differently. And so if you have ideas, and I'll certainly bring this back, but I do think people feel like they're doing daily updates. It just depends on who you follow and who you like. And most there's Alexandria and, Alexandria really at the top, and Bernie and Elizabeth. And then there's, I'm probably in the top tier of people with the most followers, but it's still, I don't know, we're at like 500,000 or something. So it just is hard. And so we try to do these updates in lots of different ways so we are able to reach people both on cable and then on social and then through our newsletters. And I try to make it a priority to communicate with you, and the town halls are one way that we do that as well. On Venezuela, look, I think it should be the people of Venezuela that determine who their leader is. And we don't want Trump deciding who he likes and putting them in there. I mean, he's saying that the United States is going to control Venezuela for the next 4 years. I mean, listen, he can't even control, lives of people here in America. What are we doing? Like going to Venezuela and trying to run Venezuela? He can't run America. So I think we need to make sure that there is a real democratic election and that the people of Venezuela choose their next leader, not in 4 years, but like immediately. And all of the strikes were unconstitutional. I'm sorry, you cannot just attack those boat strikes. You can't just go do a military action in Venezuela. That is illegal, it's unconstitutional, and there's no contradiction between saying Maduro was a terrible dictator and needed to go, and saying that you don't support this unilateral military action on Venezuela. It cost a lot of money, which they still refuse to tell us even how much it cost. And we've had Marco Rubio lie to us in classified briefings on the Hill telling us that they weren't going to take action, and then they go and take action, which clearly they knew about and never consulted Congress on. It's really, it's shameful in my opinion. But the people of Venezuela should choose their leader.
Congresswoman? Hi, I'm here.
Rachel.
Yeah, I'm here.
This is Rachel Berkson, my Deputy Chief of Staff and District Director.
And I don't have good news. I'm sorry. We only have 17 minutes left and a lot of questions.
Okay.
So I'm thinking what we should do is take 5 from this side,
okay,
and then 5 from that side, and see where we're at. And if we can take additional questions, we will. Does that sound okay?
That sounds great. I do what she tells me. We'll try that.
Thank you for your work on immigration and humanitarian issues. As a constituent affected by the war in Ukraine, I'm concerned about HR 3104, the Ukrainian Adjustment Act of last year. And noticed you're not a co-sponsor. Could you share your perspective on the bill, if you know about it, or anything about it, and what you believe is the most compelling way to encourage members of Congress to support initiatives like this? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for doing this town hall, by the way, Congresswoman. We appreciate it. I realize as a party we're having to be very reactive in what we're doing because of Project 2025, and we thank you for pushing back on all this authoritarianism. My thinking goes to the Republicans had a playbook, and they were proactive, and it sucks, right? Yeah. What can we do as a party, what is happening as a party to be proactive with things like, AI and guardrails on AI, or things like environmental justice and expanding the powers of the EPA again in our public school system. Maybe if you can speak to some of the proactive things we're doing so that we can get out of this mess and think long term. Thank you.
You bet. Great question. Thank you.
Thank you. We spoke a lot about enforcement tonight on immigration. I'd like to remind that we have the next step, which is the courts. And today, immigration courts, they are beholden to the Attorney General. They are employees of the Department of Justice. And you co-sponsored back in 22 a bill for converting the immigration courts to Article 1 courts. Will you introduce that bill again as chair of the subcommittee?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. The answer is yes, by the way. Short answer, yeah.
So during the last shutdown, I had a lot of friends who were federal employees who weren't getting paid for a long time, or friends who were on SNAP that were starting to have issues with that. And, the Democrats had good reason to be holding out, but it felt like in the end it was kind of all for naught. How do congressional Democrats this time around, what is the plan to get Senate Democrats to actually hold the line as opposed to having these secret meetings and making it feel like it's all for naught again?
Yeah, thank you.
I kind of feel that the Democrats dropped the ball for almost a year by summarily voting for Trump's agenda. So my question is, what is the Democratic congressional delegation doing to plan for midterms and then presidential elections in 3 years? Because what we're seeing now with immigration and ICE is a rehearsal of what will absolutely surely happen in six months and then in 3 years.
Great, thank you. And then Rachel, did you want to take all 5 from here also at the same time? Okay, sounds good. We'll take 5 from here too. And I'm making notes on everyone.
Thank you for being a co-sponsor on the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and the Ranked Choice Voting Act, and for making democracy an underlying theme to all the issues we're discussing tonight. There is a case before the Supreme Court, Louisiana v. Calais, which has the potential to end the Section 2 protections of the VRA, which give us the ability to ensure representation. So are you and your caucus keeping an eye on this case, and are you considering options like proportional representation if that comes down the way we're hoping that it will not?
Yeah, really important question. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, thanks. So I have a question, but it's sort of a scenario. So what would be involved in getting with the handful of Republicans that helped you pass the Epstein Act or something, and booting?
Sorry, what would be Republicans pass what?
Well, so the way you guys partnered with Republicans to do the end run around Johnson, right?
Oh yeah.
Why can't you do that and boot Johnson? I understand it's impossible to get a Democrat in there right now, right?
Yeah.
But you might be able to get Thomas Massey. They would never see it coming. And
I don't think Thomas wants to be the speaker.
Well, you get my point. Somebody, right?
Yeah.
There's not enough people in the Senate to convict, but maybe that doesn't matter. If I understand it right, I got 8 seconds. Woo. They would have to commence a trial right away in the Senate. Donald Trump is out of his mind. He could not survive that. He's too far gone.
Thank you. He's not well. That's the nicest way I can say it. Yeah.
Hi, thanks so much for being here.
I was very encouraged to hear you say that when we get the levers of power back, that we're going to hold these people accountable for what they've done. But I've been a Democrat a long time, and I see what happens every time we do get the levers of power back. We say, we need to look forward. We can't look backwards anymore. And after Iraq and after January 6th, we just move ahead on other issues. And I want to know how we can hold you accountable to your promise, and more importantly, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, who are not the men for this job. They don't have what it takes. How do we replace them with the young people in this party, the people who will fight for us, the people who have energy and are on the right side of the issues? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My question is fund schools, not IC. This message comes from my heart as an educator, as a parent, and a human and civil rights. And number two, I don't like to drop up any single digit from that, because earlier you mentioned 54% already drop off from education department. Please do not give any opportunity for drop up any single digit from that, please. And number two is, as a citizen, I'm living 31 years in the USA. I'm immigrant, but why I need my passport, American passport, and different ID. Now I hear people do, my community, I hear they have a enhanced, I don't know the name on it. Why I need a transform my ID is a difference or specialty from eyes from protect myself. Please check in.
Corey, can you just summarize the last two parts of that?
I believe it was around her ID. And
ID. You have a U.S. passport? Yes. Okay. And you were saying, what do I do?
I believe it was about real ID laws of needing that as well, in addition to a passport.
Okay. Okay.
Representative Jayapal, I agree with you that the country needs immigration reform, and I think that should be a huge priority. Just about all the problems we're having right now with ICE are because this has been put off
100%.
For decades. Okay. However, Representative, if we don't have secure borders, you're not going to get the support.
Yeah.
So I want to know, it just blew my mind that the Biden administration would allow the number of immigrants to come into the country without documentation when he could have taken action, or at least best I could tell, he could have taken action. So my point again is, as soon as we have secure borders, we can have immigration reform. And I request that you balance the two.
Thank you. Important question. Okay. Let me see if I can get through this. I think the Ukraine Adjustment Act may be the one that provides a pathway to citizenship for Ukrainians who were here on legal parole that got essentially is getting revoked. And my feeling on this is we need a path to citizenship for all of the different groups together. And so that's why I've stayed off of that particular bill, because they're revoking parole for so many people. And Uniting for Ukraine was a very important bill that allowed Ukrainians to come here, have work authorization, and frankly, that's what we should allow for all the groups, because people do want to come here and work, and we have needed people to work, but we don't allow them to. Ukraine was a somewhat unusual example where we did, but we saw how successful it was, and we want Ukrainians to stay. We want people from around the world who can't go back to their war-torn countries to be able to stay. So anyway, that's why I've stayed off of that bill, because I want to make sure we get that for everyone. I don't want to split us up into, well, these people are worthy, but these people are not, because I think all of the folks deserve that opportunity. The question about how to be proactive, this is really important. We can't just be an opposition party. We also have to be a proposition party. And so I am working on a whole set of things, and we as a Democratic Party, some of us are The Progressive Caucus has our own project. We have a project within the Democratic Caucus around what our agenda is. And you mentioned environment, you mentioned AI. I would say, also some of the basic pieces around raising the minimum wage, around making sure that we do pass comprehensive immigration reform. I'll get to that last question, which is, I think, an important and interesting one, though we might have slightly different ways of looking at that one. But there's a whole set of things. We need big investments in housing. We need people to be able to afford childcare. We need universal childcare. So we do have a proposition agenda as well that is about everyone being able to live and thrive, not just barely survive. And that's just very, very important. We can't just run on opposition, gotta run on proposition. Medicare for All, by the way, is part of that. Universal health care, where the government provides your insurance card for comprehensive universal care. I think I answered the question on making immigration courts Article 1 courts. We're going to push that again. We're going to continue to make sure that the court system within the immigration system is functioning, because the courts are so backed up. They haven't been funded. We don't have enough judges. Now Trump has fired a lot of the judges that are actually trained, and he's instituting people that have no experience whatsoever. So we're going to have to reform that. Federal workers, thank you so much. This question about federal workers and how you sacrificed so much in the first shutdown, absolutely right. And by the way, we have a whole web page on our website with resources for federal workers, because there are still people who are suffering from what happened out of that time. And as I understood your question, it's you were willing to sacrifice that, but we had the Senate, a few people in the Senate that caved at the end. And so we didn't really get the subsidies. And I'm with you. I was pretty angry when that happened, because if you look at what's happened on healthcare, we did just pass in the House with 17 Republicans a 3-year extension for the ACA subsidies. And so we're waiting for the Senate to take it up again. But I do want you to know that we should have held out, and I think we could have got it. I really do. But they didn't. And still, we in the House went around Mike Johnson using a discharge petition and sticking to our guns. There were even bipartisan options to just do a 1-year extension and to limit who got it and all this stuff. And we said, no, we're going to go for the 3-year extension. And I give Hakeem Jeffries credit for this, because he led that effort to say, no, we're not going to compromise. We're going to do 3-year extension on the ACA subsidies. That's what we passed, with 17 Republicans coming over and joining us and going around Mike Johnson. So for this time, this is why I say I'm teeing it up, because we can't have that happen again. This is not a performative thing where you do a shutdown for a certain number of days and then you cave. This has to be about getting real reforms and really holding ICE and CBP accountable. So we just have to make it clear, this can't be like a vote where you say, well, I voted no on the first time, and then I voted no, but 7 Democrats voted to pass it. That's not going to be enough. On the midterms and presidential elections, I feel like I kind of answered this question, but I'll just say again that, look, we got to be on the lookout and on the alert, and we've got to file the court cases now. We've got to train people now. We've got to make sure that we are prepared for that moment where this might happen. On January 6th, I was in the gallery. My husband texted me. He's here somewhere, by the way. Give him a round of applause. I don't know where he is. He's right there. Couldn't do this without him. He texted me and said, I think you should come back to your office. There's a crowd of people, like a throng of violent people. I'm worried about your safety. And I said, no, I'm in the safest place I can be. Nancy Pelosi is on the floor of the House. Capitol Police are around me. I was in the last group of people that left the chamber because we were trapped in the gallery and they forgot about us. Everyone had gone off from down on the main floor. The things that happened to me on January 7th, that happened to us as a country, I will never forget, but it's also changed my view of what might be possible in the worst of worlds. And I wish I didn't have that in a way, because I don't really want to go to sleep with it and wake up with it, but I do have it. And I think we all have to have that, and we have to operate both within that very real context of what might happen, while at the same time refusing to have it paralyze us, refusing to allow it to make us hopeless or powerless. And that is a very tricky balance, because I'll tell you, I could go right down deep into the channels of despair. I really could, but I'm not gonna. Because damn it, this is our country, and we have to stand up and protect it. Louisiana, yes, we're watching this very, very, very closely. This is a big court case. I mean, if they get rid of the Section 2 protections, it changes everything. I mean, gerrymandered districts everywhere. Black people are really gonna be screwed in terms of being able to elect real representatives that represent them. So we have a lot of planning and watching of that, and we're just gonna have to keep up that fight. Working with the GOP to get end runs, yeah, I mean, we did it on Epstein, and we did it on healthcare, on the ACA subsidies. We're now looking to do it on my stock trading ban. I mean, talk about looking wherever you can for partnership, but Chip Roy, Brian Fitzpatrick, Tim Burchett, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, me, and Seth Magaziner. That's our little bipartisan group. We filed a real stock trading ban bill. It's a consensus bipartisan bill. We're going to try to get that to the floor. But, you know, it requires Republicans to be willing to come along on all these things. So it's just challenging. Holding people accountable when we get power back. Yeah, I hear you, you know, but I do think this time is different. There's a lot of conversation within our caucus, I can tell you, about needing to do this, and even needing some sort of a truth and reconciliation process, you know? There are so many people who have been so hurt, violated, rights violated, so many abuses that have happened. And we need a real process to hold these people accountable and to heal ourselves as a nation. So that is very much on my mind. I get why you're skeptical. You can hold me accountable by refusing to vote for me. I do get the most votes of any member of Congress anywhere in the country. Thank you all so much. But people have to hold us accountable. That's what elections should be about. And I am going to do whatever I can to make sure that the Democratic Party does not drop this, because I just don't know how we rebuild our country if we don't do that. So yes, funding schools, not ICE, and thank you. I know you're a preschool teacher, Head Start teacher, I think. The lady that spoke, and I just so appreciate your work in the education system. And, you know, the Real ID, we fought that for a long time here in the state. Now you do have to get a Real ID, and so you just have to get it. And we're, you know, if you have a U.S. passport, you should not have to carry it with us. I saw a terrible, horrible, but funny TikTok the other day where somebody had the passport. Did you guys see that? I mean, this is what I spend my time doing when I want to de-stress. It's not very unstressful. But I do think that we are seeing, to be very serious, a real attempt to even make a second class of US citizens. And it's terrifying to me because I'm naturalized. I mean, I came to this country when I was 16 by myself. I've lived here since then. That was 1982, if you want to do the math. I don't know another country. This is my country. And they now have quotas around denaturalization. So I desperately need everyone to stand up for all of us. We can't have second-class citizens here. We can't have classes and tiers and castes of people in the United States. Okay, last question on immigration reform and secure borders. I understand what you're saying, sir. Where are you? There you are. Thank you for asking the question. It's, I would disagree with the framing, but not the concept. We absolutely need to have secure borders. I believe we get that by reforming an immigration system that is so outdated, hasn't been modernized in 30 years. We have the same quotas that were established 30 years ago, has not had any positive updates, even though the nature of our country has changed so much, even though our country has relied on the labor and the work of undocumented immigrants who have been doing all the things that we have been needing in this country, from being in the healthcare industry to being in the farms and the fields. Across the spectrum, we have benefited from the work and the labor of immigrants of every immigration status. And yet, the immigration system is one of the most complex. It's second only to the tax system in terms of complexity. It took me 17 years to get my citizenship. Now, you know I'm pretty outspoken. I can advocate for myself, but it still took me 17 years to get my citizenship. And so you have to understand the system has been broken for a long time. And the reason that people come to the border now is because the Trump administration started 10 years ago to make it even more broken. They took away legal pathways. They eliminated the refugee quota, which is already pretty small. They took away the ability for if you are a US citizen, why can't you get citizenship for the person you love and marry? Why do we have all these US citizens married to undocumented folks who then either have to leave the country or live in fear? We have 5 million US citizen children like Liam. And if you start deporting their parents, you are going to separate all these families. So it is a misnomer that we have to have border security first, because I would argue that the reason we have people coming to the border is because we got rid of all the legal pathways for people to be in the United States. And literally, the only way that people can now come to the country, whether it's to work, whether it's to be with your family, your loved one, whether it's escaping terror, drought, whatever the situation is in your country, the only way is now to come to the border. We even took away the ability to process green cards. We have a millions of people backlog in processing green cards. So we've got to understand that we need to reform the system. That is the best way to address the situation at the border, and we do need secure borders. But guess what? Back in 2013, can you tell I'm kind of fired up about this question? Back in 2013, the Senate, US Senate, passed a comprehensive bipartisan humane immigration reform bill with 67 bipartisan votes, unheard of in this day and age. And I was an activist on the outside. I did not like, I forget how much it was, $40 billion or something of border security that was in there. But I was willing to do that as long as we were reforming the underlying system. And the argument was, we need to spend all this money to secure the border. And I was like, all right, if you're at least going to give me humane immigration reform, I'll take that. We have now spent, and what happened is it came to the House, and John Boehner was Speaker of the House, and he refused to bring it up for a vote because they didn't want to solve the immigration problem. It's so useful to have immigrants out there to blame for everything, at the same time that you use the work and the labor of immigrants. So they didn't bring it up. So we never did anything on it. And now we have spent even more than that amount of money on border security, but we haven't reformed the system. So guess what happened? It hasn't been effective. And Joe Biden, I have lots of disagreements on various things, but he actually put in place a number of things that were starting to make a difference, but you actually have to expand the pathways. He did it in part through parole. Uniting for Ukraine was one example of that, but he also had the CHNV program, parole program, which brought a lot of people from Haiti and Cuba and Nicaragua and Venezuela in to be able to work while they're dealing with the situation. He did try to rebuild the refugee system. But you have to provide the legal pathways. Otherwise, people are going to come to the border because it's the only place they can come. So my contention, sir, is that we need to pass humane, comprehensive immigration reform, and we will see then the border become secure because people don't want to come to the border and live in the shadows. They want to be able to be here legally and be able to have the rights and the dignity that they deserve. Okay, so thank you so much for being so committed, so engaged, for raising important questions, for all the work that you're doing to protect our democracy. Thank you for the honor of representing you in Congress. Have a great night, stay in touch, stay engaged, and let's go win. If anybody wants to do a photo line, I'll stick around for a little bit and we'll do a photo line, and Rachel's saying come around to the side, and that's it. Sorry, we're done with time. What's that? Well, we're going to spend a few minutes doing a few photos, yeah. Thanks, everybody. Good night.